Hello students, today we'll be beginning with the chapter Going Places, and the author of Going Places chapter is A.R. Barton. Before moving into the chapter in deep detail, let's know about this particular heading Going Places, what this chapter actually deals about. First, I would like to tell you the theme of this chapter actually is adolescent fantasizing and hero worship. Now, it's generally seen the adolescents at this particular age as of adolescence, they fantasize a lot of people, they fantasize and they worship a lot of people whom they consider themselves as role models. Now, it is quite natural for these fantasizers that their unrealistic dreams, especially when their families are not so well off, not so good, not so much earning, it is because of the fact that the socio-economical background of these people, the family background of these people, plays a leading important role to in the lives of these students, of these youth, for choosing a particular profession or even. Now, in the story also, the act of fantasizing may lead to miseries, and we come to know there's a main character over here by the name of Sophie, who fantasizes one such football player whose name was Danny Casey, and she was much more dealt with hero worship, and we see over here that it was beyond something which should not be have been done. It was as if like building castles in the air. Now, students, I would like to tell something about A.R. Barton also. A.R. Barton, the author of this particular chapter, is a modern writer and who lives in Zurich in England. Not England, but Switzerland. And this particular chapter, let's begin with this. And we have, let's start with the text over here. And it tells, when I believe Sophie said, coming home from school, I am going to have a boutique. Now see the dreams of Sophie. It's just building castles into the air. The person has just not even crossed the studies of school and she wants to open a boutique. She wants to open a boutique and she is firm in that she will be very easily able to do that. When I leave the school, she hasn't left it, she is not firm actually. Now moving ahead, now Jancy, who is friend of Sophie, she actually links arms with her and they both are returning from school. And when they are in the street, and the friend Jancy is much more realistic in nature, and she's a bit doubtful regarding it, what Sophie had just said. And Jancy says over here, takes money, Soph. Now, Soph is not any other some person, but Soph has been just used as a pet name for Sophie in love. So takes money, so something like that. It needs a lot more money when you actually open a boutique. It's not an easy thing that you open a boutique so easily. That needs a lot of money. Now Sophie says, I'll find it. Sophie said, staring far down the street. Now Sophie says, I'll find it. Now my dear students, earning money is not so easy in this life. People have to work very hard to find it out, the ways in which they can earn money for themselves and for the family. And in such a way, you just can't hope that everything will go on right all throughout your life in that way. And it's not an easy thing to earn money in this life. Now moving ahead, then Jancy says, replies over here, take you a long time to save that much. If opening a boutique needs a lot of money, Jancy says it takes a lot of time even to collect that money and actually to start building it, to start doing it. It would take a lot of time, it would take a lot of money. And Sophie in reply says, well, I'll be a manager then. Now she just changes what she wants to become. It's something very usual when we see this thing in regards of children, younger children, or even in adolescents. To some extent, it's seen that people are not firm, these adolescents are not firm, these children are not firm what they want to become in life. They are not sure. It's mostly seen what the parents had been doing or the brothers or sisters had been doing. They just want to do that thing. They just want to copy that thing only. And she just changes the target of her own life. Now, my dear students, if you want to become something, you just cannot change the target, and you have to be fixed on what you want to achieve in life, because time is very important in life and time does not return back. And here she accepts over here, well, I'll be a manager then. Okay, if not possible, I'll not be open. I'm not so good. I don't have so much of money in opening a boutique. So it's better that I'll become a manager then. Yes, of course, to begin with. In the beginning, I'll become a manager then. Now, my dear students, again the same problem, same thing. No company would like to keep you directly, give the opportunity to become a manager in their company if you do not have so much of talent. You do not have much of your education. It's not possible. Till I've got enough, but anyway, I know just how it is all going to look. Now, she doesn't have concrete plans regarding it, how she'll be able to achieve that. She simply says, I know just how it's all going to look. It means that she doesn't have any concrete idea behind to reach the particular target. How will she become a manager? Or how will she actually open a boutique? She does not have any concrete plans regarding it. Now, Jansi says they wouldn't make you a manager straight off so. Now, Jansi tries to explain Sophie over here that it's not easy, and the company won't even keep you directly and make you as a manager. Give the post of a manager directly to you, Sophie. Jansi wants to explain this to Sophie. Now, Sophie in reply says, I'll be like Mary Quant. She takes an example, Sophie takes an example of Mary Quant. Now, let me tell you, my dear students, that Mary Quant, the full name of Mary Quant was Barbara Marie Quant, and she was born on 11th of February 1930, and she is still living, and she is the age of 90. And she was born in London, in England, and she was a fashion designer, and she has written some books also. Apart from being a fashion designer, she has written some books also, and she has written her 2 autobiographies. The first autobiography was by the name Quant by Quant in 1966, and a second autobiography was published in 2011. And the second autobiography's name was Mary Quant Autobiography. Now, she has written other books like Color by Quant, which was published in 1984, Quant on Makeup, which was published in 1986, and Makeup, Classic Makeup and Beauty book, that was published in 1999. Now, she just wants to be the same way. Sophie wants to become like Mary Quant. Now, we see over here that she wants to become like a person, that Mary Quant. So, what we see over here, that she fantasizes Mary Quant over here. She wants to be like Mary Quant. Now, Sophie said, I'll be natural. Now, Sophie thinks it's also easy, that it will be also natural, and they'll see it from the start. They means the people will see it all throughout from the start. From the very beginning, it will be very lovely. The company will see it very lovely, that I am going at a very good speed and things are going so normal in life. And in the company, when I'll come with very bright ideas, and all the ideas will work lovingly, so very good with the company. It doesn't happen in life. There are things when you implement, and there are things when you implement and they do not actually work on the same time, and they do not work accordingly. Moving ahead, so Sophie says, I'll be like Mary Quant and I'll be natural, and they'll see it from the start. The company will see it from the start. I'll have the most amazing shop the city's ever seen. Again, such a odd thing you'll see over here. How can it be possible that the city would have such unusual shop in the city that others do not actually kind of have? What kind of shops are available in the city, my dear students? The shops available in the market are something which are generally required by the common man. It's the common man requiring and asking for those things, and that is why those shops are over there in the market. It's not something like unusual thing that these shopkeepers are selling to you. These shopkeepers are selling you the things which you actually require in your life. Now moving ahead. Now Jansi, knowing they are both earmarked for the biscuit factory. Earmark means they are both committed. Now Jansi tells you it's required that Sophie remains committed to her studies, and she has to make her career in the biscuit factory over here, which is near their house, and they are working more for that. They should be working more for that. Whatever they are doing the hard work, they should be working for that only. Then moving ahead, Jansi, when she hears the answer from Sophie, and she becomes sad, she becomes unhappy, and she wishes Sophie wouldn't say these things. Okay, that is why we see that Jansi is actually much more worried about a friend. And when they reach Sophie Street means the place on the same street where the house of Sophie house was. So it's only a few months away, Jansi says, and you really should be sensible. It should be wise. It should be practical. You should be serious-minded. What do you have to do when you clear out of your school? You should know that we do not have much money. We are some people of a not much high repute, who are mediocre level family, and we should be thinking some practical minded like people. Now they don't pay well for shop work. You know that. Now Jansi says to Sophie that they don't pay well for any shop work. You know that, and your dad would never allow it. Okay, so she says over here that your dad would never allow it to be actually a part of it. Then Sophie says, okay, then what would be next thing would be better? Or an actress, if I become an actress, that would be much better for me. It would be a lovely thing that if I become an actress. Actresses don't work full time. Sophie replies, and so it's good, and do they? The answer is no. The actresses don't work for full time, and do they? And anyway, that or a fashion designer, now see the shiftings of the different targets you want to actually become in life, that is not actually firm. When you are actually about to just cross the class level, you are actually crossing, and you should be very clear what aim you should have in your life. My dear students, this thing is a very important part of life where you are actually standing, like you people are intermediate students right now, and you people know that you people have to achieve something in life, and you must be having your target. If still you haven't decided, it's the time that you start deciding now. What do you have to become in life? And you should not be like Sophie, you should be rather like Jansi, thinking something very concrete, thinking something very serious-mindedly, what you have to become in life. And she says over here, actresses don't work full-time, do they? Anyway, that or fashion designer. She skips to the next one. And you know something a bit sophisticated, something which is much more advanced, much more complex, and that would be lovely in doing so. And she turned in through the open street door, leaving Jansi standing in the rain. Now Sophie has reached her own house, and Jansi is outside. And Sophie says, if ever I come into money, I'll buy a boutique. Now Sophie accepts the thing that in her heart that she wants to open actually a boutique, and she says over here, if in life she really have some good money with her, she would like to have a boutique. Now Jansi says, if you ever come into money. Now Jansi says, if you ever come into money, you will buy us a decent house to live in. It's very necessary that you buy a good house for yourself rather than buying a boutique. A person's first need is to have a good shelter. so that when the person works somewhere and returns back, so there should be some proper home, which a person could say that it is his or her own home. So that is what Jansi says over here. If you ever come into money, if you really have some money, you'll better buy us a blessed, decent house, a good house to live in, and thank you very much. And then Jansi leaves over here. And Sophie's father was scooping a shepherd's pie into his mouth. When she enters the house, Sophie enters the house. So Sophie's father was filling his mouth with shepherd's pie. Now, my dear students, shepherd's pie is a dish of minced meat which is covered with a layer of mashed potatoes. So Sophie's father was filling his mouth with shepherd's pie into his mouth as hard as he could go. It was all stuff. The face was all swollen with the stuff. And his plump face, his round face, his chubby face of the father of Sophie was still grimy. It was still dirty and sweaty and marked from the day. Marked from the day means the father even had returned from the job and he was all sweaty and he was sitting right there having his food over there. And Derek says, Derek is the brother of Sophie, the younger brother of Sophie. And Derek says over here, she thinks money grows on trees, don't she, Dad? We come to know even the younger brother of Sophie, he is also much more intelligent compared to Sophie. And he says she thinks money grows on trees, don't she, Dad? And said little Derek hanging on the back of his father's chair. He was hanging on his father's chair, and he said the same and said this particular thing from his father, and the mother even sighed. Sighed means emitting a long, deep, audible breath in which there is an expression of sadness, my dear students. Now Sophie washed her back, stooped over the sink, and wondered at the incongruity of the delicate bow which fastened her apron strings. My dear students, Sophie washed back, stooped over. She was bent over the sink, and she wondered, she was looking at the incongruity and inappropriateness of the dress that she was wearing. She was wearing a gown over there, and above that she had wore the apron over there, and what she saw that the bow wasn't good. This particular apron wasn't good, and that is why the bow that actually tied the whole apron was not good. A bow is actually a knot with which actually two loops are made and which has two loose ends. So it was tied just like a shoelace. Now the delicate seeming bow and the crooked back, it could be seen of Sophie. Now the evening had already blackened the windows. It was evening, about to go evening, and the small room was steamy from the stove. It was all covered with steam. And the small room was steamy from the stove and the cluttered or littered with a mess of with a heavy breathing man in his vest. Sophie's father was over there in his vest, sitting at the table, stuffing shepherd's pie in his mouth, and the dirty washing piled up in one particular corner. Now Sophie felt a tightening in her throat. Now, my dear students, tightening in throat is some kind of a mental health disorder which is characterized by feelings of excessive worry or fear. Now, my dear students, let's move ahead. So, Sophie felt such a kind of a tightening in her throat, and as I told you, it's a kind of a disorder, it's a kind of a worry when a person is filled with too much of worry and fear. She went to look on for her brother Jeff. She wanted to talk to her brother Jeff. Now, my dear students, it's written here in the next paragraph. He was kneeling on the floor in the next room, tinkering with a part of a motorcycle over some newspaper. Tinkering means repairing. When she went actually to meet Jeff, he was actually repairing his bicycle, and there were some newspaper on the ground, the carpet over there. And he was 3 years out of school. He had studied in school, and he is much elder compared to Sophie, an apprentice mechanic. He's an apprentice mechanic. When we say apprentice, apprentice means trainee or a newcomer or a novice or a beginner. So he was 3 years out of school, an apprentice and mechanic, and he traveled for his work each day to the far side of the city. It was not on the same side or where he actually lived, where Jeff actually lived. It was far from the city, at the another corner of the city. He was almost grown up now, and she suspected areas. She thought there are some areas of the life of the brother Jeff about which she should be knowing, but she knew nothing. Now, about which he never spoke to him, to her even, and he said little at all, ever voluntarily. If we say he freely, he actually talked about his own will, his own thoughts. It was very less that he actually discussed his own thoughts with his own sister, Sophie. Now, words had to be prized out of him like stones out of the ground. Now, prized out of the ground means, just like stones means, as the stones that are actually buried in the ground. If you want to take them out, you have to dig them out. So, if anything has to be taken out, it means over here, if any words have to be taken out, or any thought has to be brought out from Jeff, and Sophie had to work for that, work harder for that. And she was jealous of his brother's actually silence. And when he wasn't speaking it was though he was away somewhere. She thought that he was away somewhere out there in the world, in those places she had never been. And she had been at places, perhaps she thinks over here that her brother had been at places where she had never been, and she wanted to talk of those lovely places, whether they were only the outlying districts, maybe distinct, maybe remote places over there from the city where they actually live over here, or places beyond in the surrounding country. Surrounding country, my dear students, means villages over here. Who knew? Who knows? Because the brother Jeff didn't tell anything about such places in over here to the sister Sophie, because perhaps, first of all, by two things. First of all, the age gap was there, and secondly, he was also much silent also. Now, moving ahead, now they attained a special fascination because they were unknown to her. Now, these actually were places perhaps she had wanted to know, Sophie wanted to know, but it achieved a special fascination and obsession and attraction in the mind of Sophie, and she wanted to be at such places. Perhaps there were also people, much more attractive, much more fascinating people, interesting people, of whom he never spoke actually. Sophie thought that way of her brother. It was possible, though he was quiet and didn't make new friends easily. It's that possibility. And she longed to know him, and she wanted to know about these people. She craved and she desired to actually meet and know these people. And she wished she could be admitted. She would be much more allowed into the affections of her brother, and someday the brother would tell and reveal the truths of his own life to her. Now, let's move ahead. Though their father forbade it, the father disliked it and disallowed it and refused it. Jeff had never expressed an opinion. She knew he thought her too young. Just because, as I told you earlier, there was a age gap between the brother and the sister. Brother was elder, Sophie was younger, and much younger was her one more brother, Derek. And we come to know over here that she was impatient over here, and she was conscious of a vast world out there waiting for her, and she knew instinctively, without conscience, without thought, that at home, there as in the city which had always been her home. She wanted to know that places actually where her brother used to go, what he thinks actually about, and it expectantly awaited her arrival. It excitedly awaited or waited for her arrival, that actually the day would come when her brother would actually reveal her own secrets, his own secrets to her. And she saw herself riding there behind Jeff, and she just imagines. She does a lot of imagination. Let me tell you, in this particular chapter, my dear students, that she does a lot of thinking over here, that is something which is not real. Thinking is something can be real also, and there can be things, dreams and thinking which can be unreal. So she actually used to think, and she saw herself riding behind Jeff, that Jeff would be driving a bicycle and she would be sitting at the back of Jeff, and he would be wearing new shiny black leathers jacket, and she herself would be sitting at the back on the motorbike, and she would be wearing a yellow dress with a new kind of a cape, a sleeveless cloak, which you can say, and that would be flowing back behind. Now it's so all not so original in life. Now there was the sound of applause that could be heard. What she thinks, applause means clapping done, and as the world would rose to greet them, and was the reality is right now that the brother Jeff over here, he is sitting down over there, mending his own bicycle, checking his own bikes, not bicycle, my dear students, sorry, motorbike over there, and he sat frowning at the oily component, and he cradled in his hands. Cradle means hold gently the different parts and protectively in his hands, as though it was a small dumb animal and he was willing to speak. It seemed to Sophie that his brother wants to speak something, but he hasn't been able to speak. Now Sophie just wants to tell something of her heart. And my dear students, let me tell you one more thing. Sophie has been seeing a lot of making a lot of wild stories that she had been habitual of making. And Sophie says over here, I met Danny Casey. Now Danny Casey, my dear students, was a footballer which she liked too much, and she did a lot of hero worship of Danny Casey. She liked it too much. It was like a kind of a worship that many of the youth actually do nowadays. They either keep their actors or actresses or maybe politicians or some person's pictures in their rooms actually. It might be like Sachin Tendulkar, it might be like so many other like Amitabh Bachchan or somebody else of the pictures in their rooms over there, that they want to be just like the same kind of person, their style, they want to copy their styles. They like those things, what these people actually do. Now Sophie says, I met Danny Casey, which is actually, again I told you that she makes a lot of wild stories which are not real. And she says over here, Jeff says he looked up around abruptly Jeff says abruptly means suddenly. Jeff, when he hears this from her daughter, and suddenly he says, Where did you actually met Danny Casey? Now Sophie says in the arcade. Arcade means market, and funnily enough, and Jeff says it's never true. How can it be? It's possible that such a big person of a repute, of such a big stardom, how can it be possible that a footballer like Danny Casey would come actually and move around so easily in the market? Don't you think it's not real? And that is why Jeff says it's never true. And Sophie says I did too. I did meet Danny Casey. And Jeff says you told that. Now Jeff says if yes, okay, you think it's true. Did you told that also? Because that was also the lover of football. Now she shook her head and chastened at his unawareness that he was always at the first to share her secrets. Now she was, as it's written over here, she shook her head, chastened. Chastened, my dear, means humiliated. Now she felt humiliated that the brother is actually not giving importance to what she is about to tell, or she is actually telling. Now Jeff says, I don't believe it. Simply he refuses it. He doesn't believe in the stories that she actually makes. And Sophie says, there I was looking at the clothes in the Royce's window. That's the name of the shop. That's the name of the boutique. And Sophie says, there I was looking at the clothes in Royce's window when someone came and stood beside me. There was a one person who came and stood beside me. And I looked around, and who should it be but Danny Casey? And I just saw Danny Casey just standing next to me. Now Jeff says, oh lad, what does he look like? Now Sophie says, oh come on, you know what he looks like. Now she just tries to avoid over here that how he actually looks like. If she would have really seen, she would have really told how does he looks like. Especially when we talk about in close means, and that is what the next question arises from Jeff, and he asks to the same thing. Close to, I mean. He asks the same thing. Now Sophie replies over here, well, he has green eyes, gentle eyes, and he is not so tall as you think. And he is not tall, but he has lovely eyes. And she wondered if she should say about his teeth, but decided against it. Simply that she has not been so close to this footballer Danny Casey. She is just making up the wild stories, and that is why she just decided against it. There is a thing in the heart that she is making wild stories, but still she is much more connected to these wild stories. Now the father had washed when he came in. He had finished his food, and he came back again, and his face and arms were shiny and pink, and he smelled of soap. He had washed his hands. He was looking lovely. He switched on the television and tossed one of the Derek shows from his chair onto the sofa. Now see the kind of the way Derek, even if we see that he's a young boy, and he just threw one of the shoes of Derek was on the lying on the sofa. So he threw it. The father threw it and sat down with a grunt, with a low sound. A sound could be heard while he actually sat. Now Jeff said Sophie met Danny Casey. He said the same thing from the father. Jeff said the same thing from the father, and Sophie wriggled, and Sophie actually jerked where she was sitting at the table. She actually jerked. Now father turned his head on his thick neck to look at her, and the father looked at the daughter Sophie, and his expression was one of disdain. He actually ignored it because he also knew that Sophie makes a lot of such kind of wild stories that are not true. No, it's true, Jeff said. Jeff said so. And so Sophie's father said, I once knew a man who had known Tom Finney. He says he knew one such person who actually known Tom Finney. And the father said, actually, the father of Sophie said so. Now, my dear children, Tom Finney or Sir Thomas Finney, the complete real name of Tom Finney, was born on 5th of April 1922, and he died on 14th of Feb 2014, and he was an English footballer who played from 1946 to 1960 as an outside left for England in football. Now, let's move ahead. So, Sophie's father said he once knew a man who had actually known Tom Finney, who had seen Tom Finney. Tom Finney was a lovely football player, much more of repute and higher repute compared to Danny Casey. Now, if they look after him properly, my dear students, Jeff said, Jeff said, you told us, and Sophie's father again said, Casey might be that some good someday. Now, again, we see the kind of a hero worship of Sophie over here. She tries to defend Danny Casey over here because she loves her so much and she doesn't want to hear anything which goes against Danny Casey. And Sophie's father says Casey might be that good someday, and Sophie says better than even. He's the best. He's the best football player, and there's no better player compared to Danny Casey. And Sophie's father says if he keeps his head on his shoulders, if he takes his responsibilities properly, if they look after him properly, if the team members, if the teammates, and if the team management looks to him properly, there are a lot of distraction, there is a lot of hindrance for a youngster in the game these days. The father accepts, Sophie's father accepts this. Now Sophie says he'll be all right. He's a good person, he'll be all right. And he's with the best team in the world. And he plays for the United team. And Sophie says that he's with the best team in the world. The team, we see that he loves the team of United, and she loves the team of United simply because Danny Casey is actually a part of it. Now Sophie's father says he's very young, yet father accepts the reality that he has to still go a long journey as far as this game is concerned. He has to grow with much more responsibility. And Sophie says he's older than I am. Now Sophie compares Danny Casey to herself, and she says I am younger than Danny. It's better. And Sophie's father says too young really for the first team. For the first team means for the country. Just because he was playing for the country, so it's better that he should take responsibilities properly. Danny Casey should take responsibilities properly. Then you can argue with that some sort of ability. Sophie's father, Sophie says you can't argue with that sort of ability that he has. Sophie says to her father. Now Sophie says he's going to buy a shop. Sophie sat from the table where she was actually sitting, and Sophie's father made a face. Grimaced means he made a bad face. Because if a person who is actually a footballer, he should be much more concerned with his own activity related to football. He should be working much more hard on football. But here we come to know that as Sophie says over here Sophie says over here that he is going to buy a shop. And Sophie's father, let me tell you over here, he muttered something inaudible and dragged himself round in his chair. Okay, so the father actually was inaudible, and he somehow dragged himself and he sat himself on the chair. And this another of your old wild stories. The father just rejected such a kind of a story. And Jeff, in meanwhile, he says over here, she met him in the arcade. Now, brother Jeff takes part on behalf of the sister. And he too says, she met him in the arcade in the market, Jeff said, and told how it had been. Simply because we see over here that Sophie actually tries to prepare her brother to speak in favor of her when he is actually talking to the father. Now, one of these days, you are going to talk yourself into a load of trouble or a deep trouble, Sophie's father says. And Sophie says, Jeff knows it's true, don't you, Jeff? Now we see over here that Sophie actually sees that father doesn't believe the stories that she is making. And again, she wants to try to motivate Jeff to speak in favor of her. And so that is why she says, Jeff knows it's true, Dad. Don't you know, Jeff? And she just tries to say this thing. And Sophie's father says, he don't believe you, though he'd like to. Now Sophie's father accepts the thing that he doesn't believe his own sister Sophie, and he would like to, if you speak the truth, he would like to believe on you. But the thing is this, that you make a lot of wild stories, and that is why he would not like to believe on you. Now, my dear students, this whole chapter is divided into 4 different sections. Now, tomorrow we will move to a different section. Each and every section is divided by 3 asterisks over here. And in the next video, we will be beginning with the next video. Thank you.